right, let's do this thing. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Jeremy on Marketing podcast. I'm super excited to talk to you guys today because this is the very first Monday where I am no longer a clinic owner. Last week was the first official day, my last official week of owning Ripple Physical Therapy. So the sale, the last 6 to 8 months, to be honest, have been a big transition period of me moving out of the clinic, the new ownership coming in, and I haven't had a ton to do with the clinic in those last few months. Last Friday was the official close date, and I think what I want to do today is just dive into my learnings, use this as a platform to talk about what I'm feeling and the process of the whole thing. And if you're listening to this, chances are you own a clinic, and the potential of selling is at least something that you think about. Definitely automating the practice so you can get location, time, financial freedom. And I think this is going to be a really good opportunity for me to just break down what the sales process was, if you're trying to get down that route, what the whole process looks like, what goes on during that whole process. And I think the biggest thing that I want to hear from you guys as well is if you have any questions, if there's anything that I can answer, I'm going to be trying to put out a bunch of content around the sale of the clinic. And I want to hear from you guys in terms of what's going to be helpful for you. So diving into, again, today, it's the first Monday where I'm not opening up my computer, looking at PT everywhere. Even though I wasn't really involved with the clinic for the last handful of months, it's still one of those things that takes up my, mental bandwidth. I'm sure if you guys, again, if you're clinic owners and you've been on vacation or you go away, every day you're still looking, how many leads are we getting today? What does the evaluation process look like? I know this person came in for an eval. Did they actually sell a package? I was checking our Slack channels at all times. And today I woke up and today's the first day that I didn't really care to look. So it definitely feels weird. It's definitely a different feeling, but it's good to not be focusing on two things at once. So obviously we're running patch as well. And a lot of my mental bandwidth was still, even though I wasn't involved, still just looking at everything that was going on with Ripple because at the end of the day, I was still responsible for everything that was happening there. And I think what I want to do in this podcast is start from the beginning and talk about starting out with Ripple and understanding that I think on day one, my goal wasn't to grow this thing and sell it. I really loved being a clinician. As many of you guys know, I'm actually not a physical therapist. I went down the route of instead of going to PT school, I got my massage therapy degree and went down the strength and conditioning route. So I was obsessed with continuing education. I had to be if I wanted to put myself up against any physical therapist. I really needed to know my stuff. So all of my bandwidth and time was around becoming the best clinician that I could be. And that was really the goal at the beginning of all of this was I had an awesome local base of people that really loved my hybrid therapy service. It grew very quickly, especially during COVID. And I wanted to open up a clinic where I could bring on other providers that thought and felt the same way about care and giving care to the Boston community. And that's really all I cared about. I wanted to grow this clinic. I wanted to make it big. I wanted to live in Boston forever. And that was when I was coming in, when I signed the lease for the standalone space, and when I brought on my first PT, and when I was treating, seeing 35, 40 people a week, that's really what I wanted to do. So the sale was never really something that I thought about. But what ended up happening was when I brought on my first provider, and especially my second provider, I realized that I had to learn marketing. And if I wanted to feed these clinicians new patients, I had to understand marketing. So when I got down the rabbit hole of learning Google Ads and diving into what a CRM is and how to utilize HubSpot, what does email marketing look like? How do you reactivate people? How do you create marketing campaigns to get more revenue? I fell in love with that. I just became obsessed with that feeling, the feeling of creating a marketing campaign or selling a Google ad lead into a package, I got way bigger dopamine hit from that than I did from a training plan where somebody was executing and then PR'd a marathon. So that's when I realized, man, I really want to lean into the marketing side of things. And I don't really care about being a clinician anymore or doing anything along those lines because the marketing was working and I really loved it. I leaned into that side of the business and we're able to grow very quickly. When I left Ripple, it's a seven-figure business. There's seven PTs there, two locations. It's got a badass culture. It has a clinic director who's now one of the owners who runs the show, runs the day-to-day operations. And it's a really like sustainable automatic model that we've created. And that's really because of everything that I was able to put in place beforehand. The funny thing about that is the last couple of years, really, or definitely the last year, I've had to sit back and watch Ripple thrive pretty much without me, which is very interesting feeling. I would go back into the clinic and I would just be in the way when I walked in there. All of our staff members, they're seeing 25 to 30 patients a week. And anytime that I popped in and it was in the middle of the day, there was a bunch of sessions going on. There really wasn't much for me to do. I was a big part of getting those new patients in the door, but on the day-to-day side of things, they really didn't need me. I was able to, and this is a big part of why I was able to sell it and why I wanted to sell it was because with Patch and what we're doing with Patch, I can still do what I'm doing with Ripple and give the keys to somebody else that's going to really care about growing and expanding Ripple, what my initial thoughts were with it. When I first started the clinic, I really wanted to grow it to two, three, five locations throughout Boston, really be that brand name in Boston that people sought out for physical therapy. But because I cared so much about on the marketing side of things, and now with Patch really growing that, I cared a little bit less about growing Ripple. And I could still do all the marketing stuff for Ripple, but opening up two, three, four brick and mortar clinics and having that liability under my name was just not something that I was interested in. So as soon as I realized and had that thought process, that's where I know I needed to sell this thing and I really needed to move on, and it's definitely challenging. It's, I think, especially with Patch and the notoriety I have with actually owning and running Ripple, that's a really big part of what Patch is and what we do. I think at the end of the day, it was really all about the mission and what we were trying to do with Ripple was to grow it to multiple locations, 10 plus employees. And that's why I started. That was our mission. And because I really wasn't doing that, and I had a clinic director who was super, she's super interested in growing this the way that, what she signed up for. It's a really cool story. She was the first employee that I had on board. So she stuck with me since day one. She's really the first PT that kind of took a chance on a massage therapist opening a clinic up. And now she's the owner of the clinic, which is really awesome to see. I think that's really important thing to remember of if you want to sell your clinic, there needs to be a reason why. You need to understand that as an entrepreneur, you need to know what is next? What is going to be that other thing to do? Luckily for me, I had Patch that was taking up 80% of my time. And if I'm going to sell the clinic, there is something else for me to do. So there really needs to be that reason why. And I had a really clear reason why of here's why I want to move on and why I'm going to move on and what I'm going to do next. And I think that gets me into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the learnings I had from selling the business. And I think I can break it down into there's a lot of really good things, there's a lot of bad things, and there's a lot of surprising things as well. So let's start with the good things. What I was just talking about there was I'm leaving the clinic in really good hands. The clinic director who's been running the clinic on a day-to-day basis for the last year plus is now one of the owners of the clinic, and she is super motivated to grow and scale. The same has been really awesome to see her manage the day to day with the staff that we have right now. They're super bought into the vision and what we're trying to do with Ripple. And I don't think that's something that I would ever be able to do. There's also, I was working with an executive coach. That's one of the reasons why I sold this, because he came to the table and he actually used to own a bunch of physical therapy clinics, approached me saying, "Hey, I know you have this patch thing going on. I know that's really where your interests and passions lie. I love this cash-based model. I want in on it. I have a really good relationship with your clinic director. I would like to take this off your hands and try to continue to run it and grow it with her running the day-to-day operations." So it was just a really awesome opportunity. And that was a really good part about this, which again leads into the bad side of all of this stuff, which is, no matter how easy or simple or however non-complex somebody might say a sale or a transition out of a business might be, the bad part about all of this stuff is that it's still business. And there's going to always, no matter how long you think this is going to take, if and when you ever go through this, double that amount of time. Again, for the last 6 to 8 months, we've been in the process of me just transitioning out of the clinic. I got an LOI for the business almost a year ago now. So it's been over a year. We've been talking about selling the business for over a year. And I think that's something I just didn't realize. So again, a year ago, even, and definitely when I first started the clinic, I had no idea about anything about mergers and acquisitions. And I just thought, it's like, okay, we're just going to sign a couple pieces of paper. Here's my credit card. Here's the bank account information. You just take this off my hands. That is not how it works. The whole process, and transparently, the last 6 to 8 months have been one of the most stressful times of my whole life. The amount of work that goes into actually selling a business and all of the hoops that you have to jump through and all the legal things and all the negotiations, there's a lot that goes into it. So again, if you're thinking about selling and that's something that's on your mind, maybe even if it's 2 years from now, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, having all of your financials in line is going to be very important. Having a really clear breakdown of all the sessions that all of your current patients have. Where are you allocating all of your funds? What does your profit line look like? What are you running through the business that's actually a personal and not really a business liability? There's so much that goes into transitioning out of a business that, again, I just had no idea. I wish I had somebody to guide me through that process. And that's what I hope for you guys that I can do, is to just give you a little bit of clarity in terms of what this process looked like. And then the last thing, the surprising thing, again, I think this can be done. I think if you would have talked to me 2.5 years ago, I would have told you, like, who would be interested in buying a kind of rinky dink 3 to 5 person physical therapy clinic, especially a cash based one. I remember I got a valuation of my clinic 2 years ago because I knew I wanted to start this process. And they're like, we don't really have any sort of historicals on a cash clinic. And even though it seems like a better model than an insurance, I think that's going to hurt your valuation. And it did back then. I got a far less multiple on the value side of things because there was no history of selling a cash based clinic. I think 5 years from now, that's going to be totally different. I think a cash based clinic is going to be more appealing to a buyer, private equity, strategic acquisitions than an insurance is going to be, especially as insurance reimbursements continue to get worse and worse. But again, that was something that when I went through that valuation process, I got dinged on because we were cash, which is super interesting. I think another part of that, and again, like the surprising part of all of it, was going through that valuation process and almost having a list of things to do where I know I needed to remove myself from the clinic. That was one of the big things that was going to increase my multiple. And a multiple being how much of your EBITDA, so your earnings before interest taxes, what that number is, you get a multiple assigned to that number. And that's how much your clinic is valued at. So if you want that multiple to go up, then there's a handful of things that you need to do. Again, you need to remove yourself from the clinic. One of the biggest selling points for my clinic was the back end systems that we had built out. This is our CRM. This is our predictable marketing. And this was the piece of software, especially something built on something like HubSpot. HubSpot's a big company. HubSpot's not going anywhere. That was very attractive to the buyer, and that got me a higher multiple on my valuation. So there are things like that. And it's just super surprising and very interesting to see the inner workings of what goes into selling a business and what makes a business attractive. It's much more than just what is your top line revenue number. It's about how fast have you grown? What does your current staff look like? Do you have somebody in place that's running the day-to-day operations? Do you have a consistent marketing funnel? Do you have a marketing operation that's guaranteeing new leads that are coming in the door? Again, there's just a really cool, surprising part of the whole process was that there's the formula, there's an algorithm to all of these things. So I think that was it was actually a really fun part. I knew, like I said, going through all of it, it was not fun. It sucked. But I kept telling myself, this is going to be an awesome learning experience for when we get to the other side of it. Now that we're here, again, the first Monday that I do not own the clinic anymore, and there's a weight lifted off my shoulders. So I know the place is in really good hands, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And we're done that process. So it was a really fun educational process, and I've just learned so much about it. And that's, again, why I'm doing this and why I want to share with you guys. Because if you ever have interest in selling a business, I want to be able to answer all those questions for you guys. I think the last part to wrap all this stuff up is what's next. Continuing to reflect on all the changes here. I think what I'm most excited about is for the last a year and a half ago, I started Patch, which is a digital marketing company where we help cash clinics set up a CRM, run ads, do email marketing, do local SEO. And I've been half-assing that. Maybe not half-assing isn't the right word, but I've only had half of my mental focus on Patch up until this point. Luckily for us, I think we have a really awesome product. All of the clients that we're working with are seeing really good results. But selfishly for me, what I'm most excited about and what I woke up feeling this morning was I can now put my full focus in on Patch. I'm super, super excited about being able to really grow this, really help other clinics like yourself get to the point where I am at today, where they just went through an acquisition process. They got this huge check in their bank account, hopefully a lot bigger than what I got, and they can enjoy this feeling that I'm having now. So even though it's bittersweet that my baby, my first business, I don't own that anymore, a brand that I built and I put my heart and soul into it, it's extremely bittersweet, but I know that they're in incredible hands, and I'm really excited for this fresh start and to be able to put 100% of my focus into Patch. I've got tons of new energy. If you guys have any questions for me, feel free to DM me on Instagram. It's @_ Jeremy Dupont. Feel free to shoot me an email, jeremy@thepatchsystem.com, and subscribe, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, follow the podcast, and just hit me up and let me know what questions you have about the sales process, whether it's what I went through or if you're trying to prep yourself for that moment. I'm more than happy to chat with you and let you know what you can be doing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.